it is my pleasure to welcome almost an old hand at LTalk. Spoken before, and I'm sure those of you like me who live in a digital world know this speaker very well and have learned lots from them over the years. Our first speaker, our speaker to open block 2 of LTalk Chapter 9 is Nik Peachey, and Nik is the Director of Pedagogy at PeacheyPublications, which is an independent digital publishing company that specialises in the design of digital learning materials. He's been involved in education since 1990 and has more than 25 years of experience working specifically with online and blended learning environments. He's worked all over the world training teachers and developing innovative and creative products, and is a 2 times British Council Innovations Award winner. So let's start block 2 with Nik. Nik, I can hear your mic's on. Can you put your camera on for me? And
hi there.
There we go. And you're now with the audience. So the floor is yours. Enjoy the talk, everyone. See you on the other side.
Great. Thanks very much, Sean. Thanks very much, Sean, and thanks for the introduction. I just got my screen and microphone turned off for some reason. Hi, great to see so many people here. Thank you very much for taking the time to come along. And I hope I can make it worthwhile for you. During the presentation, I'll be sharing a number of ideas connected with using video, and I'll also be sharing some example videos that you can try those ideas out with. Don't worry too much about trying to get links or trying to make notes really quickly. At the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link for the presentation so you can access it all and you can try out the ideas. So try and sit comfortably, don't panic, and try and enjoy things, and try and enjoy some of the videos as well that I'll be showing you. Okay. Right, let's get started. So this session is on video and multimodal literacy in the language classroom. The main focus of it will be on using the videos, but I'll give a quick introduction to multimodality and multiple modes as well. I don't need to go into too much detail with this slide, I'm sure, as Sean's given me a great introduction, but that's me. If you want to check that we're the same person, these are my 2 Innovations Awards. And if you want to find out a bit more about what I do, there are links along the bottom here to my social media. So you can check those out later once you get the presentation if you want to. Okay, let's start with what is multimodal literacy. By all means, if you think you know already, then by all means type in what you think it is, and we'll see how many definitions you can come up with. So type it into the chat if you think you know. If you don't worry about it. I'll try and give you a definition and make it a little bit clearer for you. But basically, multimodal literacy is about understanding the role of multimodality in modern publishing and modern communications. Traditionally, when we've taught English, we've taught either the reading skill, the listening skill, the speaking skill, and we've focused on sort of linguistic communication and the kinds of words you need. So in the past, that's been appropriate because we lived in much more of a kind of monomodal world where you'd sit and read a book and you would just have text. So you would be reading it and dealing with the linguistic aspect of it, or you would listen to the radio and you'd just be hearing it, or you'd be listening to the TV or looking at a picture. But increasingly in the world that our students live in and the world that most of us live in now, we're experiencing text in multiple modes. We're watching and seeing text at the same time as we're seeing moving pictures, or we're looking at images that have text with them, or we're reading and listening at the same time. And that's become an interactive process as well. The modes of communication and the modes of publishing that we experience these days aren't sort of one-way broadcast communications. We interact with the kind of media we experience now, whether it's through comments or whether it's through publishing media ourselves. And whether those are videos or audios or writing blogs. So that this world of communication and these different modes of communication have become much more complex. But that hasn't always been reflected in the way that we're teaching our students. And I think one of the moves towards sort of multimodal literacy is sort of trying to equip our students with the kinds of skills that they need to deal with multiple modes. There are some examples of the different modes you can see on the screen here on my graphic, which I can enlarge for you. So for example, we have a linguistic and a visual mode. So maybe reading through a graphic novel that has speech bubbles and has images and things like that. There's the visual mode, which would be purely looking at a painting or a photograph, sort of linguistic, visual and oral, sort of watching and listening to a video, or linguistic and oral, maybe listening to a podcast or something like that. And this one at the end, which I'm going to focus on most, is the linguistic, visual, oral and spatial. When you're watching and listening to a short film or video, maybe you're reading captions or subtitles, you're interpreting what you're hearing as well as what you're seeing, and the relationship of text to images. And those things get pretty complex. And a lot of students, I think, suffer from this kind of cognitive overload when they're faced with sort of authentic video in this kind of environment, and it becomes very difficult to deal with. And that's one of the things that I want to focus on in this talk. Anyway, here's a nice quote from Kieran Donaghy on multimodal literacy and a definition of it. Multimodal literacy means the ability to comprehend and respond to multimodal texts and to compose multimodal texts. So that's what our students really need to become truly multimodal literate, whether that's a thing. I'm multimodal literate. Yeah, so that's one of the focuses of multimodal literacy. And again, as I said, just to reiterate that, it's not just about viewing and understanding, but it's also about what we call representing and being able to create, these kinds of multimodal texts and to express ourselves, express our own feelings, and to communicate ourselves. I won't be going into the representing side in this talk, though I've done other talks on multimodal literacy where I have gone into that. What I want to focus on in this one is just on the viewing, comprehension, and particularly one aspect of that. But before I get into that, I'd like just to do a quick poll with you. If you can scan the QR code with your phone, and I'd like to know how you usually use video with your students, because that's the part of it that I'm going to be focusing on, looking at practical ideas for using videos. So I'd like if you can scan the QR code with your phone. I'll give you a couple of minutes and just type in some of the ways that you use video with your students. If, for example, you don't use video with your students, don't worry, just type in, I don't use video with my students, but we'll just have a quick look and see what the responses are. If all 4,000 of you respond, then it might get a bit too complicated, but I'm sure not everybody will, but we can have a quick look. I'll give you a minute to do that when I have some water. And I'll go and see if anyone's responded. Always kind of a worrying moment in case there's nothing there, but great. So some people use video every lesson, often, usually. That's sort of frequencies. I'm sort of looking for help. Prediction tasks, yeah. Present a topic and then discuss. Yeah, it's nice for presenting topics. Watching videos, answering questions. Yeah, that's a very common one. Of putting purpose in on the smartboard, using Springboard, occasionally to stop video and ask relevant questions. I usually let students watch video and provide discussion and comprehension tasks. Yeah, for listening comprehension. And that does seem to be, this idea that we use video and we use it and ask questions to see if they understand the text. It does very often seem to be a a substitute for listening, and quite a nice one, a way of enhancing listening, if you like, by using video instead of an audio tape. And that's quite common. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, but that's not what I'm going to be focusing on in this session. What I really want to focus on is exploiting the visual and exploiting the visual elements of video, and doing that through silent video viewing. And so what I suggest and what I want to look at is techniques that involve just looking at the video and watching it without the sound on, and seeing how much meaning our students can take from that, and seeing how much they can understand just from using their eyes. Because very often when we're using it for listening, there is this kind of process of cognitive overload. They're trying to watch, they may be trying to pick up on text elements, maybe they've got a worksheet that they're looking at too, and they're trying to listen as well. And that can be really kind of overwhelming for students, especially if we're trying to use authentic video. So in this session, I want to look at some techniques that we can use at different stages of the lesson to get students kind of viewing and working with their eyes before they actually go to the listening. They could do the listening afterwards, but first and initially getting them to sort of see what they can understand through viewing. Again, we can structure lessons. Probably you structure your video lessons much in this way, and I'm going to give you kind of different viewing tasks that you can use at different stages of the lesson. So often we have previewing tasks to access students' existing knowledge of what they're going to about what they're going to watch. We have a task for them to do while they're viewing, so they know why they're watching. And then sort of post-viewing tasks, which give them the chance to maybe analyze or reflect on the content and think more about it and maybe how it applies to their lives. So, I'll try and give you some examples of tasks that you can use at each of these three different stages. I'll just check that we're all okay so far. Hope so. Great, good. We're just checking that you're on the same slide that I am. Okay, I'll go to the first slide. So we'll look at some previewing tasks, and these are ones that we can use actually before students start watching the actual video. And a nice one that you can use, I think, is before they view it, just maybe grab some screenshots of the video at different stages and put them into a different order. So they have screenshots from different stages of the video, and they have to put them in the correct order. So by watching them, so that scaffolds their understanding of what they're going to watch before they see it. I've actually tried this using, hang on, let's see, make sure we're still there. See if, yeah, you can still see that. I've actually tried this using clips as well. What I did is I created an activity like this, where students watch different parts of the video and then have to put them into the correct order. So if you can see this, this is the first part that I show them. They see there's this man and the woman sitting on the bench, and the man takes one of her biscuits and eats it, and she looks outraged. In the next part, we see the woman actually buying the biscuits from a machine. She's getting kind of frustrated because they get stuck in there and it takes a lot of work for her to get them out. In this one, we see her, she's on the bus and, she's on the train and she's holding her packet of biscuits and she watches the young man walk away. And in this one, she's just getting on the train, she's angry and she's closing her blinds. So students watch those little clips and then they kind of drag these around to try and put them in the correct order. And that gives them sort of some previewing scaffolding. And then after that, they can watch the whole clip and they can sort of then decide whether they got them in the correct order or not. But for me, that's a kind of previewing task that I like to do, because they haven't listened to anything, but they're already starting to think about what's happening here, and what should be the order of this, and how does that work. I'll actually give you the link to that activity if you want it, and you can pick it up later from the You can pick it up later from the presentation anyway, but I'll put it in chat in case you want to have a fiddle with it, see how it works. Okay, so that's one example of a previewing task. Another nice previewing task that I like to use is to instead of giving your students the comprehension questions and getting them to watch and ask the questions, give them the comprehension questions and get them to try and answer the questions without watching. So, and that works particularly well for narrative, so that they actually have to predict the story. They might not predict it correctly and they might come up with something completely different. But, as you can see, from these questions, if you go through the questions and sort of think about the answers, you can actually create your own story based upon the answers to the questions. And that, again, they help to scaffold this process of understanding as students work through the video. So these are some questions that are based around a video that I show my students. And so, as I said, they look through the questions, try to guess the answers, and then create their own story based around the answers. And then they watch the real story. So the actual comprehension part of it is to see how much of the story, their story, is the same as the story in the video. You can watch the video here later if you want to, as there's a story. Oh, yeah, we don't want to watch the advertisement, do we? So you can watch that later, the video that goes with it, and have a try, see how that goes. But giving students questions like this gets them thinking about and predicting their own story, and then they can compare that to the real one, and that's a kind of different kind of comprehension task. Another nice one that I like, again, is predicting character and relationships from the images. Give students some images or from the video that you're going to show them before they watch it, and some of the characters, and get them to kind of predict what the relationship is between the characters. There's another example here that you can use if you want. The video is here to go with it. This one's a bit of a long video, but it's great. You can segment it. But there we've got kind of, these 4 different characters here, and we can try and sort of predict what the relationship is between them. And students can invent that. And again, as with the questions in the last task, it's not that important whether they predict it correctly, but it gets them thinking about it and making and exploring their assumptions about the content as well. So it's a nice thing to do. And then when they watch, they can check their assumptions. And very often they are correct. Students tend to be correct when they do it. So those are some of the previewing tasks, seeing how I'm going for time. While viewing tasks can be more complex to create, because often, if you're giving your students a form to fill in or questions to answer or something like that, they're trying to watch the video and they're trying to look at a worksheet as well. So hopefully these kinds of tasks get away from that. And again, they get them watching the video silently. So this is one that I like to do, is to get the students watching the video silently and trying to think about what the thoughts and feelings of the person are. What are they thinking, and what are they feeling? And quite importantly, how do you know? Getting them to think about how they know what the person's thinking or feeling helps to focus them on body language and how people are using body language. So I'll show you an example of that. You can have a look, and I'll pause it, and then you can think about what are they thinking or feeling. Okay, so it's difficult to pause. What's he thinking or feeling at the moment? What's going through his mind? Play a little bit further. What's she thinking or feeling now? How about him? What's he thinking or feeling now? you can actually sort of get them to write a kind of mental dialogue of what's going through each person's what's going through each person's mind. There he is rushing to the window. Now what's he thinking or feeling? Yeah, so that's a nice video for kind of getting students into doing that kind of task. And then afterwards, you know, they can watch it with sound and explore that a bit more. But you can grab the video yourself and try that later if you want to. So that's a nice while viewing task. Just turn the sound off and get them thinking about what people are thinking or feeling. And I mean, I've chosen these videos because they're ones that I like, and I like these kind of short animated videos. But you can also do this with a video from your course book, whatever your course book is. If it's got some video with it and it's got people interacting, it's worth, you know, stopping and pausing and getting them to, and playing it silently and getting them to, students to think about how much information they can pull from the person's body language, from their gestures, and how they interpret that. And of course, these issues of body language and gesture aren't universal. You know, they can be different in different cultures, and so it can be really useful to focus students on that. Another one that I like to do with students is to look for where's the conflict. You know, whenever students watch a film, a video, or something like that, there's some kind of drama in it, and drama is built on conflict. You know, who's the conflict between? Sometimes it can be between two characters. It can be between a character and nature or environment. It can be, you know, the character and society, there's conflict there, or it can be actually be conflict within the person themselves. So, you know, get them to watch first. You know, the first viewing task is, okay, watch this and see where's the conflict, you know, where's the drama coming from. So this would be an example that you could use here. So where's the conflict in this one? Okay, so that's just a little snippet of that as an example. So yeah, most of you said it is between the character and nature, isn't it? There's a conflict with nature. Initially, I thought it would be between the conflict would be between the father and his boy, but it's actually it comes to being a conflict with nature. At some points, there's a conflict with his own nature, I think, as well, because he gets a bit careless. But it all works out in the end. But you know, it's good to again watch it, don't listen to it, just watch it, see how much information, and see where you can find the conflict. And that's a good sort of first viewing task. Afterwards, you can go into more complex comprehension and maybe listen to it as well. This is another interesting viewing task, and it's a good one to lead into sort of developing multimodal literacy as well, because it's about understanding plot and how plot is structured through a video, you know. And this is a classic kind of example of a five-part plot structure that you can get students to explore. And and this applies to loads and loads of films once you know this structure. And it's one again that students can use when they get to representing and creating their own videos or their own meaning. And the 5 steps are usually there's some kind of exposition, and so this is the introduction where they set the scene for the protagonist and show where the conflict begins. the second part is the rising action, and that's where the drama starts to begin. There starts to be a problem that unravels things and changes things. So that's where the conflict comes in step 2. And then there's a kind of climactic peak where the conflict peaks and where things start to really go dramatically wrong, and that's the exciting part of the story. And then there's some kind of resolution. You see how the problem or the conflict is resolved. And then most stories also have what's called a denouement. So you show what's happened after the story, how have the events changed the relationships between the characters and things like that, and how does that work. Again, there's a little example video here that you can watch if you want to, and and it fits classically to that 5-part plot structure. Here we are setting the scene. There's a woman. There are pictures on the wall of her and her robot throughout her life. And here she is a little bit older, and here's her robot who looks after her. So that's our first scene, our first step of setting the scene. And as students watch this, even without the sound, they can make out what's happening, and they can work their way through the different stages. As you can see, he's getting quite old now, as well as her. And this is the beginning of the rising drama, or the beginning of the conflict. She watches her TV and she sees that there's a new robot who's super efficient. And her robot has forgotten the sugar. And fallen asleep. Yeah, so that's an example. Again, as I said, it works through the whole of this five-part plot structure. And once you understand this 5-part plot structure, you see how many films are based on this structure. All of the Toy Story films, I think, are built on this kind of structure. Probably everything that Pixar's made, and so many, fairy stories and things like that follow this structure of exposition, rising action, climax, resolution, and denouement. And getting students to just watch and see what parts fit into that structure is a really nice viewing task that help them to understand how narrative is constructed. And I think that's something quite important for multimodality, is really kind of seeing beneath the surface of things and seeing how things are structured and how people create meaning within them. So that's a nice task you can try. There's another task here. Again, this one is graph-based, and what you do is you get your students to create an empathy. They map their empathy emotions with the main character within the film. And what they do is you can see it starts at the top with love, like, going down to dislike and hate. And there's kind of a timeline here going through it. And what you do is you get your students just to put a pencil on the beginning of the line and move it depending on how they feel about the main character, whether they start to like them more, whether they start to dislike them more. And again, I've got a video that helps that you can try this out with if you want to try it with your students. Let's push it forward to where we meet the main character. And just to give you some background, don't give your students the background, they can work this out for themselves, but when they watch the whole video. But the video is about this little boy robot, and he seems to be the only living thing left in Paris. There's no sign of people, and it looks like everyone's died, and he's there all on his own, and he's just sort of playing Monopoly with a teddy bear. And so he starts writing these messages. In case you can't say, it says, "Hello, my name is Leo. Please come play with me." And he throws these paper planes out across the whole of Paris to see if anyone will come play with him. But there are no people anywhere. And finally, he finds something else that's alive. I'm going to stop it there. So go back and have a look at it. Have a look at the whole video and see how your perception of him changes as you move through the video. It starts off, very sad, and and he seems like this sweet little robot, but it becomes more interesting as you work through. But do have a look at that and see if you can try and map your emotional response to it, and then sort of give your students a try. Activities like this are quite different for students to do. And so, they won't always work the first time you try them. But if you try them a number of times, students get used to it, and the novelty wears off and they start to think about it more deeply. But it's a great way of actually viewing something and thinking about how it impacts on you, how it affects you. And that's a nice activity for doing that, I think. And that's called mapping emotions. Another activity that I like to do with any kind of content that I give my students is to try to get them to look for familiarity, for similarities with themselves. If they're watching a video of a person, I get them to think about what they have in common with that person. And that you could use that for any picture in your course book as well. If you have any pictures in your course book, just get your students to look at them and think about, what do I have in common with this person? And it could be also what things are different, and what things are similar. How is my life similar, and how am I similar to that person? And again, I've got an example video that you can try that with here. So watch this and think about, how are you similar to this person, or how are you different? Okay, you can watch the rest of that at your leisure if you want to, and see how this experience with the old woman changes his life. But again, it's a way of getting students thinking about and reflecting on the material and watching, so that they see and understand what's happening before they have to listen and sort of dig deeper into maybe dialogue or what's happening there. But that's sort of looking for similarities and differences and seeing how they're reflected in the material. So those were some of the while viewing tasks that you can give students. And now I just want to look at some of the post viewing tasks and things that you can do after they've watched. Oh, I may have missed one. No, I haven't. So this is one thing that you can do. You can actually start analysing characters and get students to analyse characters, you know. And one nice way to do that is use Jung's 12 character archetypes. You know, the psychologist Jung said that you could divide all people into these kind of 12 categories. And so there are some character archetypes here. These are 12 ones. I'm not sure these are the absolute same 12 that Jung created, but you can get students to analyse what they watched and try and associate the different people and what they watched with these different sort of characters. So that gets them to these character archetypes, and that gets them to think a little more deeply about the people that they're watching and what motivates them, what their feelings are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and things like that. So it gets them to think about character. So that's a nice activity to get students analysing character and thinking about character. This is another activity that I really like to do, and it's to get students to actually, after they've watched the video, or to watch the video and then think about the backstory. You know, okay, we often see this sort of section of time with these people in, but what happened before that? You know, what was happening 5 years before that? Think about the relationships of the people before the action took place. And again, this is a nice video that I think can be used for that. I'll just show a clip from it. So this is part of the clip. So, you know, get students to watch it first and then think about what happened before this part. Again, there's a robot, there's a young girl. Okay, so that's where that ended. So, you know, just by watching that clip, you can see that there's a relationship between the robot and the girl, and a sort of strong emotional bond there. And so, you know, how did that happen? What happened before that to make that happen? You know, So again, and students don't need the sound, they don't need to hear it to actually see what's happening there, and to see what the bond is. And so you can actually sort of stipulate how far back you can go. Okay, so that's what's happening now. So that girl was in the glass cabinet, the robot was rescuing her. How did she get in there? What happened before that? What's the relationship? Why are these guys shooting at them? Or you could actually go back further and say, okay, 5 years before that, what was the relationship between the girl and the robot, and how did that develop, and what happened there? So get students kind of exploring those ideas and thinking creatively. And of course, there's no correct or incorrect answer, but as long as they're making sort of deductions and assumptions based on what they're watching, and they're thinking about it logically and critically and coming up with ideas in that way, I think that's a great way to get students used to thinking beyond what they can see, because often they're just watching for what they can see and hear, and they're not thinking about what's behind that, how's that relationship been built, and how has it developed. This is another one that I like, and I guess it's similar, and that actually getting students to look at characters and think about, okay, what happened in their childhood, what happened that influenced the way, that's influenced the way they behave now. And again, thinking more deeply about why people do things and what their motivation is. You can use this same video that I showed you earlier, thinking about this guy, what's happened to him, what was his childhood like that's affected him and influenced the way he behaves now. So they could sort of come up with a portrait of this man when he was a child. And they use the information that they've seen in the video to create their portrait. This is, why this happened. And I think that's another important thing about communication, and especially when we're watching video and we're watching people interact, and the people that we interact with too, is kind of looking to understand their motivation and why that happens. Not just to judge it, or to think about how it affects us, but to think about how things might have affected them. So again, that's a nice after viewing task. Get them to analyse some of the characters, come up with childhood profiles of them. This is another after viewing one that I particularly like to do is actually get students to write interview questions for one of the characters in the film or the video that they've watched. Tell them afterwards, okay, you're going to interview this person. Think about some questions that you'd like to ask them, and students can work together to come up with the questions, and then they can actually role play the interview if they want to, and they like doing that. Get them to role play the interview and sort of talk about and come up and imagine the person's answers. And again, I've given an example of a video that you can use this with. And again, it's this one of the old woman with her robot. So if you watch that or if students watch that, they can sort of decide, okay, write some interview questions for the woman, write some interview questions for the robot to find out how he felt about what happened, and because I think he has quite a traumatic experience later on when her new robot arrives. Could be interviewing the new robot and asking that about what went wrong, but get them to think about questions that push them to ask for information that they haven't seen, so that they're thinking outside of what they've experienced and thinking a bit more deeply about what the other possibilities are and what these people are thinking and feeling. I think this is my final one, and that's kind of actually do an activity which I call flash forward. And in this activity, you get them to think about what will the character in the video, what will their life be like in the future? What will their life be like, say, in 5 years' time? Or what will they be doing in 10 years' time? And get them to sort of write a profile of the person in the future. And again, I've got a video here that you can use to do that. I'm just going to move this part off of it. Nope, it's gone. Where's it gone? Try again. Okay, so there's a video of a girl, she's going to work. It's making a rude gesture. Okay, so that's just a snippet. So that's her life now. Okay, so get students to think about, okay, that's her life now. How will her life change over the next 5 years or the next 10 years? How will her life be different? And they can either sort of think about sort of putting a positive spin on that or a negative spin or whatever way they'd like to choose it. But just get them to sort of imagine, how that's going to be and what she's going to be like in the future. Okay, last one. Oh, I thought that one was the last one. I have just one more, and that's thinking about motivation. Thinking about what motivates people and what do they want? What are they trying to achieve? And again, this is a good one because whenever somebody communicates, whether it's through text, writing a blog, or whether it's in a conversation, they do it with a purpose. They have motivation. There's something they want. Or there's something that they want to achieve. So actually getting students to watch silently and think about that, I think is another good activity to sort of focus students on motivation. And again, here's a clip that you can use it with. So what's this man's motivation? And again, so it continues. So you could sort of think about the old man and the young man as well. What's their motivation? What's going on in this relationship? What does each one want? What are they trying to achieve? And again, I think that's a really important thing for communication or for experiencing any kind of dialogue with someone. Think about motivation. What's driving people and what they want. Okay. It's great if you can pull these kinds of apply these kinds of activities to videos in your course book. You know, there's no reason why you can't use all of them with different videos or images that you have in your course book. But if you want to find videos, then Pinterest is a really good place to do that. And I actually kind of collect them together. I've got a kind of Pinterest pin board where I collect all my favorite ones here, and I think I've got 170 of them. So if you do want, if you grab the presentation and hit the link, hit the image, you can come and have a look at some of mine, and it's very easy to grab them if you want them and you want to try sharing them. Just put the link into chat, but it's probably easier to get it from the presentation at the end. But there are lots of different ones. They're all quite short. Some of them have dialogue and some of them don't. And most of them are about 3 to 5 minutes. There are 1 or 2 longer ones, but they're ones that I've kind of picked out and that I really like and think have huge potential for use, especially for silent viewing. So if you are looking to try out some of these ideas, go to my Pinterest account there and have a look at those and see which ones you can use in your own materials. I think these kinds of animation and these animated shorts are really quite motivating for students because they look very authentic, and because of the way they're animated, they have a strong focus on communicating visually, and so they can be sort of very motivating for students to sort of experience some authentic materials, even if they're at very low levels. They can get something from these, and again, with the sound off, the language level doesn't really make any difference. Any student of any level can understand with their eyes and take information from that. And probably this is more of a valuable activity for lower level students than it is for higher level students, because they need to see what they can pull in terms of visual support. Okay, I've got, there's a link here to a document produced by Oxford University Press on multimodality in ELT. Highly recommend it. It's great reading. It was put together mainly by Kieran Donaghy, but also myself and Sylvia Karasthati, who helped edit it and supplied some ideas. And I created a toolkit of example materials to go with it. So do check out the link to that here, and you can download it. If you want to, if you've got your QR code scanner handy, you can get it straight away. That will take you to the page where it is. And there are lots of other really useful documents from Oxford University Press there too. So go and have a look at those and check those out. If you haven't had time to grab that already, do try and get the presentation and get it. And the last thing, happy to answer any questions. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer them. I'll also put the link to the presentation here into chat, if I can just get back there and find it. And I'll get back to the right one. So for those of you who want the presentation immediately, you can scan the QR code there. But in the meantime, I'm more than happy to answer questions. Thanks for listening, and I hope you get something valuable from that.
Nick, so the Q&A, there are a number of questions. Just before we get into the questions in the Q&A, and I know you covered it at the end, one of the main questions that's coming up is where can they find those videos? You put your Pinterest up there at the end. Are the videos that you've shown in the session, they're all on that Pinterest?
Yeah, they're all on that Pinterest, and lots more as well. But if you get the presentation, if you access the presentation, you can access all of the videos through that. You just click on the little interactive buttons that are on the presentation, and it will take you to the video, and you can get the YouTube or Vimeo link from there. So you can take all of those from that if you want to.
Brilliant. I noticed that question was asked so many times in the chat box or whatever, so I thought we'd deal with it now before we got into the other questions. Thank you for that. So if you click on the Q&A button, Nick, on the chat box, you should be able to see some questions there. Tom has been curating them very nicely for you. So if you want to work your way through those, there's around 5 minutes for questions, and I'm here if you need help.
Okay, so can you share the QR code again for the documents? We'll get the. We've just answered that really. If you get the QR code for the presentation, all of those are in there. Okay, there's another one here from Monica C. What about the methodology that is used beyond the use of short animated videos? Yeah, I mean, I've used short animated videos just to demonstrate here because, you know, that's quite convenient for this kind of talk. We've got a limited amount of time. I want to show you something that has impact without stealing anything from anyone's course book. But, you know, all of these techniques can be used with pretty much any video, whether it's a video from your course book, whether it's a video you find on YouTube, whether it's a video you create yourselves. Some of the more specialist ones, like the plot, breaking down the 5-part plot structure, that's kind of, I guess, more unique to narrative, so it helps more with narrative. But most of the other ones you can use with pretty much any video. And, you know, and one piece of advice that I would like to give you is that, you know, whatever the video you're going to use with your students, before you play it to them and before you think about what you're going to do with it, just turn off the sound and watch it yourself and see how much information you can pull from it just by watching it with your eyes. You'd be your eyes are the only thing you're going to watch it with, aren't they? But, you know, you'd be surprised how much information you can take from something just by looking at it if you're focusing on the visual. You know, there are lots of other things that I haven't gone into here as well. Things like, you know, pulling out cultural clues as to where it is, you know, and things like that. Pulling out cultural clues as to when it is as well, and thinking about how it's different from your own culture. So you can use the methodology in your course book or with any video at any time, I think. My next question, if the students say, I don't know what they feel after the video, what should I do? That's interesting. That's an interesting one, actually, because I think most of the time they will know. Um, if you pause the video, you can actually try to get them to imitate the gestures or the sort of position that the person's in, so that they sort of get a feeling for that as well. But, you know, if they absolutely don't know, if you know you have a group of 20 students and none of them know, you can always tell them or get them to wait and listen, and so when they hear it, you know, and when they hear what's going on and find out what's going on, they can actually check against their assumptions. So then afterwards you can say, okay, so now you've seen it and you've heard it. Now what do you think they're feeling? What do you think they're feeling? Okay, another question asking for the QR code. What app do you use to separate video excerpts? That's an interesting question. When I gave you the activity where you had the 4 videos and they started at different points and you had to arrange them, what I did was when you go to YouTube and you grab a link to something or you grab an embed code, it allows you to put in the time at which you want that link or that video to start. So if you do that, you can arrange the videos so that they all start at different points. And that's what I did. To actually put them into that presentation so that they could be dragged around, I used a tool called Genially, which is the same one I use for my presentation. And that allows you to embed videos and objects that can then be dragged to different places on the screen. And so that's kind of a nice way to do it, because then you can just give a link to students and they can watch their bit and they can drag them around and share and arrange them themselves. So that's how I do the short video excerpts. But you can do the same thing almost as effectively, just taking a few screenshots from different parts of the video. Okay. I'm trying to put. Have I lost my Q&A? I'm trying to find where I was in the Q&A stream. There's a question about can the videos be used with people who lack vocabulary? And I think, yeah, my simple answer is yes, they can, because a lot of these tasks, particularly as they're viewing tasks and they're about accessing existing knowledge and understanding things, the task is actually with the viewing, so they can actually talk about it in their first language if they don't have the language to talk about it in the target language, and the task still has value. You know, they're still watching and trying to interpret and understand meaning. Just because they're not talking about it in English doesn't mean that it's not still a valuable task. Question about what level can we use the videos with? It depends really to some extent on the video content, but I think, you know, even with very low levels, you can use them. As I said, you know, they can reflect on the task using their first language, and the task itself still has value. So I think it's worth doing that. Another one, is it appropriate for writing skills at university? It depends what the video is, and it depends what the student's studying, I guess, you know, and how you set up the task. You know, that thing about the 12 different characters, Jung's different character stereotypes or archetypes, you know, that kind of task, and writing that about a video and dissecting and understanding a video in that kind of way is quite a high level task, and I think that would be appropriate for a university level class. There's a comment actually. I believe most of these tasks work very well in a pedagogical setting with young learners and not with adults. I think you're being deceived there by the videos themselves. You know, the tasks work very well with adults as well, but you choose a video that's appropriate for adults. You know, so, you know, if you've got business English students, for example, getting them to watch a business English video without the sound and seeing how the people interact can be a very important and very useful cultural task, you know, to understand how business gestures and how to read people's faces and emotions. You know, even at an adult level for business students, that kind of task can be really valuable. So I think it's really about the video that you use as to what the age appropriacy is.
I couldn't agree more, Nick. Unfortunately, it's now 6 o'clock, so it's like there are no more time for questions to be answered, I'm afraid. But would you like to wrap up and say goodbye?
Yeah, thanks very much for listening, and thanks for so many interesting questions as well. You know, obviously you were listening and thinking about things and trying to sort of think about how you're going to use them in your own context. And I hope they're useful. You know, grab the link to the presentation, try out the videos, and think about how you can apply them in your own setting. And especially important, I think, is, you know, whenever you're going to use a video with your students, turn off the sound first, watch it and see how much information you can pull from that. And you could be surprised about how much it is. Okay. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.